I just looked at my brother across that dinner table, and I remember thinking, this is it? This is the moment everything changes. But let me back up. My name is Celeste. I'm 31 years old. I'm a forensic accountant, which honestly is the most ironic detail of this entire story. And for most of my adult life, I was the person my family called when things went wrong. Not just called, counted on, depended on, drained. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, the middle of three kids. My older brother, I'll call him my brother throughout this because that's what he was supposed to be, was 4 years older than me. My younger sister was 3 years younger. My parents were decent people in a lot of ways. My dad worked at a parts manufacturing plant for 26 years before his back gave out. My mom did bookkeeping for a dental office. We weren't rich. We weren't poor. We were the kind of family that clipped coupons but also took one road trip every summer to somewhere in the Midwest. Normal, functional. Or so I thought. The first time I noticed the pattern, I was 17. My brother had just turned 21, and he'd already cycled through two community college programs, a stint working at a tire shop, and a brief attempt at selling insurance that lasted about 6 weeks. He had a girlfriend who had a baby, and the baby was beautiful, and none of that was anyone's fault. But somehow, the solution to every problem in my brother's life was my parents reaching into whatever savings they had and handing it over. I noticed. I kept quiet. I was 17. What was I supposed to say? I went to Ohio State on an academic scholarship. I was sitting at work, eating a sad granola bar for lunch. My phone, my sophomore year, and by junior year, I'd landed a part-time position at a small CPA firm downtown that basically turned into a real job the summer before my senior year. I paid for my own books. I paid for my own parking pass. I was proud of that. I'm still proud of that. My brother, during those same 4 years, had two more jobs that didn't work out. A second kid with a second girlfriend, and a business idea. A mobile detailing business that my parents funded to the tune of $11,000. The equipment sat in their garage for 8 months before he sold it at a loss. I didn't say anything then either. I told myself it wasn't my money. It wasn't my business. But here's the thing about staying quiet when something's wrong. The thing gets bigger. It always gets bigger. I graduated, passed my CPA exam on the first try, and got hired at a regional firm in Columbus. I was 23 years old, making $54,000 a year, which felt enormous to me after years of library wages and ramen. I got my own apartment. I bought my first real piece of furniture, a couch from a furniture store with an actual warranty, and I remember sitting on it the first night and just crying a little. Because it was mine. Everything in that apartment was mine. I had earned it. My mom called 3 weeks later. Your brother's in a situation, she said. The situation was this. He had co-signed an apartment lease with the second girlfriend. They had broken up. She had moved out, and he owed 3 months of back rent, $4,200, or he was going to get evicted and it would go on his credit report and ruin him. I asked why they couldn't help him. She said they'd already lent him $6,000 that year for car repairs and the kids' medical bills, and she just didn't have anything left. I was 23. I had a savings account I had been building for 2 years. I had just under $9,000 in it. I said yes. I don't know why exactly. Partly because I loved my brother, or the idea of my brother, the version of him that existed when we were kids, and he taught me how to ride a bike in the Kmart parking lot on a Saturday afternoon. Partly because my mom sounded tired in a way that scared me. Partly because I didn't yet understand that saying yes once is the same as opening a door that you'll never quite get all the way closed again. He paid me back $200 the following month. Then nothing. When I brought it up at Christmas, he said he was working on it. My mom gave me a look, just a look, a slight tightening around the eyes that I understood to mean, let it go. Don't ruin the holiday. Don't be difficult. I let it go. Over the next 6 years, I let a lot of things go. There was the time my parents needed help with a car repair because they'd lent my brother money and couldn't cover it, so I sent them $800. There was the time my brother needed a security deposit for a new place because he'd been evicted from the last one, $2,000, which I sent because my mom cried on the phone. There was the birthday dinner where my brother announced he'd found a real opportunity, a franchise investment that was going to turn everything around, and he just needed a short term loan to get in before the deadline. And everyone looked at me. And I wrote a check for $5,000 in the parking lot before I drove home. That check bounced back to me 8 months later because the bank account he'd deposited it into had been closed. I'm a forensic accountant. I trace money for a living. I find fraud. I was sitting at work eating a sad granola bar for lunch. I missed every single sign in my own family for almost a decade. By the time I was 30, I had given all Lent, and at this point, the distinction had completely stopped mattering, somewhere around $40,000 across all of it. $40,000 that I had earned, saved, carefully accumulated, while also building my career and trying to have a real life. $40,000 that was simply gone. I had started seeing someone seriously. His name was, well, let's call him my boyfriend because he's my fiancé now. And the story of how we got here is part of the story. He was an engineer, steady, precise. The kind of person who read the fine print on everything and kept a spreadsheet of his quarterly expenses and was genuinely puzzled when I told him one night over dinner what I'd been doing. $40,000, he said, give or take. Celeste, he just looked at me for a moment. That's a down payment on a house. I knew that. I had known that for a while. I just hadn't let myself sit with it long enough to feel the full weight of it. He didn't push me to cut anyone off. He wasn't like that. He just asked me very calmly what I wanted, what I actually wanted, not what my family needed. What I wanted a house. I wanted a real savings account that didn't get raided every time someone had a crisis. I wanted, for once, to feel like the money I earned was actually mine. Then we stop, I said. We stop giving money. He nodded. Okay, we stop. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. My brother called me 4 times over the next 3 months with various situations. I said with as much warmth as I could manage that I wasn't in a position to help right now. My mom called twice to relay the situations in more emotional detail. I said the same thing. My dad, who was mostly quiet about family money stuff, texted me once to say that my brother was really struggling and he hoped I could find it in my heart to help. I texted back, I love you, Dad. I'm not able to help financially right now. And then for 3 whole months, nothing happened. It was almost peaceful. My boyfriend and I opened a joint savings account. We started looking at houses in the suburbs. Nothing fancy. Just something with a yard and a garage in a neighborhood where kids rode bikes on the sidewalk. We put together a budget. We had a plan. Then my mom called to say the whole family was having dinner together for my dad's 62nd birthday and would I please come, and she'd make his favorite pot roast, and she just really wanted everyone together. I said yes. Of course I said yes. It was my dad's birthday. I would to describe that dinner table because the image of it is still so clear in my head. The pot roast was in the middle. There were rolls from a tube that my mom had been making for 30 years. There was a green bean casserole with the crispy onions on top. My dad was in his usual chair at the head of the table. My sister was there with her husband and their little girl who was 4 and absolutely chaotic in the best possible way. My brother was there. His 2 kids were there with a sitter in the living room so we could eat in peace. My mom was at the other end of the table, and she had the particular expression on her face that I now recognize as the one she wore when she had something to say and was waiting for the right moment. I sat next to my boyfriend. I was sitting at work eating a sad run bar for lunch. The sitting bar produced the expression on my mom's face. He squeezed back. We got through most of the meal. My dad talked about a fishing trip he wanted to take. My sister's daughter knocked over a glass of milk and we all helped clean it up and laughed about it. My brother was quieter than usual, which I noticed but didn't comment on. Then my mom set down her fork. I need to bring something up, she said. While we're all together, my dad looked at her. My sister looked at her. I looked at my brother and he was looking at the table. My mom explained that my brother had gotten into serious financial trouble. Not just regular trouble, serious trouble. He had taken out a personal loan 18 months ago to invest in a business opportunity that had turned out to be a scam. He had lost the loan money. He had then, trying to recover it, borrowed from a payday lending place, a chain, one of those storefronts on every strip mall in Ohio, and the interest had compounded in a way that he hadn't anticipated, and now he owed nearly $30,000 across multiple debts, some of which were now in collections, and his credit was destroyed and he was at risk of losing his car, which he needed for work. $30,000. I felt my boyfriend's hand tighten on mine under the table. The family needs to come together. My mom said, "We're asking everyone to contribute what they can. Your father and I can put in 10,000. We need everyone else to help make up the rest." There was a silence. My sister said, very gently, that she and her husband were already carrying a lot with the new baby costs, and they just weren't in a position to do much. But maybe they could do 1,000. My mom nodded. She was looking at me. "Celeste," she said, "you've done well. We're not asking for everything. But your brother needs about 15,000 to get out from under this." $15,000. That was the number, she said, out loud, at the dinner table. On my dad's birthday. $15,000. I put my fork down. I didn't plan what I said next. It came out of something deeper than planning. "Mom," I said, "I've already given this family close to $40,000 over the last 8 years, and I haven't asked for any of it back. I love my brother. I love all of you, but I can't do this." The table went very quiet. My brother looked up from the table for the first time since the conversation started. His expression wasn't angry. It was something worse. It was the look of someone who had genuinely expected me to say yes. My mom said, "Celeste, that's not. I've been keeping track," I said. "I can tell you the dates and amounts if you want. I'm a forensic accountant. I track money for living. I know exactly what I've given." Another silence. And then my mom said something that I still think about. She said, "You've always been the selfish one." I heard my sister make a small sound across the table. My dad said, "Now hang on." My mom wasn't done. "Your brother has children. He has responsibilities. You and your boyfriend, you have your nice apartment, your savings, your plans. He has kids who need a father who isn't buried in debt. If you can't help your own family when they need you most, then I don't know what we raised." My boyfriend started to say something. I put my hand on his arm. I stood up. I picked up my purse from the back of my chair. I said, "Happy birthday, Dad. I love you." And I walked out of that house. My mom did not come after me. My brother did not come after me. My dad, bless him, came to the door and called my name. But by the time he got there, I was already at my car, and I just shook my head at him. And he nodded like he understood something. Or maybe like he was too tired to argue, and I drove away. I cried for about 15 minutes on the highway. Then I stopped. Not because I felt better, but because there was nothing left to cry about. I had made a decision I should have made years ago, and the grief of it was real. But so was the relief, and the relief was bigger. My boyfriend was quiet the whole drive. When we got home, he made us both tea. He's not a tea person. He had to look up how long to steep it. And he sat across from me at our kitchen table and he said, "You did the right thing." "I know," I said. "It's not going to feel like it for a while. I know that too." He was right on both counts. The next 2 weeks were hard in a specific, grinding way. My mom texted me 3 times. The texts were not apologetic. They were variations on a theme that I was being cold, that family was supposed to stick together, that she didn't raise me to be this way, that I would regret this. I read every one of them and I did not respond. My brother texted me once asking if we could talk. I did not respond to that either. My sister called and said she was just checking in and she wasn't taking sides, but she thought maybe I could reconsider. And I told her calmly that I loved her, but I wasn't changing my position. And she said she understood and we hung up. My dad called on a Sunday morning. I picked up because it was my dad. He didn't try to change my mind. He just said he was sorry about how the dinner had gone. And he was sorry for what my mom had said, and he was proud of me. That word, proud from him hit me somewhere unexpected. I had to take a breath before I could answer. He said my brother was going to have to figure this out himself, and maybe that was what he needed, and maybe it was long overdue. He said my mom was angry, but she'd come around. She didn't come around, not for a long time. But something else happened first. About 6 weeks after the birthday dinner, I got a call from my bank's fraud department. Someone had applied for a personal loan in my name. The application had been submitted online with my social security number, my date of birth, my current address. The bank had flagged it because the email address on the application was slightly different from mine. One extra letter in the middle that someone hoped would slip through. The loan amount on the application was $28,000. I sat down on my kitchen floor when the fraud investigator told me that. I actually sat down on the floor. I had hardwood floors and it was cold, and I just sat there with the phone in my hand and I thought, I know who did this. I didn't say that to the investigator yet. I let her finish explaining the process. They had caught it before it was funded. My credit was flagged. I needed to file a report. There would be an investigation. I asked if they could trace the IP address the application had come from. She said that was part of the process. When I hung up, I called my boyfriend. Then I called the police. I want to be clear about something. Filing that report was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not because I didn't know it was right, because I knew exactly what it meant. It meant that my brother, who taught me to ride a bike, who I had bailed out and covered for and quietly carried for almost a decade, was going to face a federal charge. Identity theft is a federal crime. Wire fraud potentially. Depending on how it was prosecuted, he was looking at real consequences. I filed the report anyway. The investigation took 4 months. The IP address traced to a device registered in my brother's name. There were emails on a secondary account of his that showed he'd been gathering my personal information for weeks before submitting the application. Piecing it together from things my mom had mentioned, an old document he'd found at my parents' house when he was staying there, a piece of mail that had been forwarded to the wrong address. He hadn't hidden it very well. Then again, he'd never had to be careful before because I'd always just given him what he needed. The DA's office filed charges. My brother hired a public defender. My mom, when she found out, called me for the first time in 3 months. The conversation was not what I expected. She didn't ask me to drop the charges. She didn't yell. She just said, very quietly, "Is this really what you want?" And I said, "Mom, he tried to steal $28,000 from me. Using my identity. I didn't choose this. He did." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I know." Just that, "I know." I don't know exactly what she meant by it. I've thought about it a lot since then. I think she meant that she had always known, somewhere under everything, that the way our family had operated was not sustainable, that constantly directing resources toward my brother while I quietly provided them couldn't go on forever, that something was going to break. It broke. Just not the way she'd imagined. My brother pled guilty to 1 count of attempted identity theft. He received 2 years of probation, mandatory financial counseling, and 200 hours of community service. No prison time because it was a first offense and the loan was flagged before any money changed hands. His public defender negotiated it down. I didn't attend the sentencing. I had a work deadline and a house closing on the same week. Yes, my boyfriend and I bought the house and I made a choice about where my energy was going. We closed on a Tuesday. It was a grey November day, the kind where the light is flat and everything looks a little washed out. And I stood in the driveway of our new house holding a key on a plain keyring and I cried. Not sad crying, the other kind. The kind where you're so relieved and so tired that your body doesn't know what else to do. It took my mom 8 months to apologize, a real one, not an implied one. She called on a Thursday evening, I remember, because I was making dinner and I almost didn't pick up. And she said she had been doing a lot of thinking, and she was sorry for what she'd said at the birthday dinner. And she was sorry for the years of putting me in a position where I felt like I had to keep giving. And she knew she couldn't give back what I'd lost, but she wanted me to know she saw it now. I told her I appreciated that. I told her I loved her. I told her I needed things to be different going forward, and she said she understood. We're not where we used to be, but we're talking. That's something. My brother and I have not spoken since the day the charges were filed. I don't know if that will ever change. The version of him that I keep close to my heart, the 20-year-old with grease on his hands teaching a 12-year-old me to balance on a bike, is still there. But he is separate now from the adult I had to make a decision about. I hold both of those things at the same time. I want to learn how to do that. My fiancé proposed last spring in our backyard, which now has a vegetable garden that is entirely his domain and a fire pit that is entirely mine. It was a Tuesday evening. Nothing special about the day. He just came out with 2 beers and sat down next to me by the fire pit and said he'd been thinking, and he was thinking he wanted to do this for the rest of his life. Sit in this specific backyard with me, and would that be okay? I said yes. I have a savings account now with a number in it that I don't share with anyone, and every time I look at it, it's a little bigger than the last time I checked. I have a house with a mortgage in my name on a street where kids ride bikes on the weekends. I have a job I'm good at and a man who reads the fine print and a sister who calls every Sunday and a dad who said he was proud. And every once in a while, my phone gets a notification, one of those generic bank alerts, just a routine balance update, and my chest tightens for a half second, a reflex, waiting for the bad news. Then it passes. And I look around at what I've built. And I think, this is mine. All of it. And nobody is taking it.